Okay, I skip all of this previous slides, which already we discussed in our previous lecture. So I think we have stopped at engineering approach, right? So engineering approach has certain number of steps, right? It has certain number of steps, and all of those steps is you know kept in the form of some sort of process, and that process is exactly followed while developing software, right? We stopped at that point of time, so I will continue from there. So we have seen here, I think we have stopped it here at this point of time, right? So we have seen, so what is an engineering approach? So usually you have all these steps, right? And all of these steps put all of them in the form of a process, and we use this process while developing our software. Now, for success in large software development, it is important to follow an engineering approach consisting of well-defined process. So that means we must all follow an engineering approach when you are developing any large software. Okay, so that consisting of well-defined process. Okay, so what is a process? Software process. Software process consists of steps or activities to be carried out in a particular order. So there are certain number of steps or the activities. Those activities will be carried out in a particular order. That means unless or until the first activity is finished, we are not allowed to go into second activity. So this sort of, so they follow some sort of order also. Software process deals with both technical and management skills. So any software process, so that should deal with technical aspects as well as management aspects. One of the technical aspects may be like this. So whether the project that we are going to develop is technically feasible or not, whether technical, whether technical skilled people are available or not. So whether that technology is very cost effective or not. So these sort of things should be discussed. And in part of in case of management issues, so you can think of like so that particular process should ensure that the project should be, the tasks or the activities should be scheduled in such a way that the resources, whatever will be allocated, will be met. And this software process consists of different types again. Okay, one may be process for software development. So there is a process for software development itself. So when you follow this sort of process, so what will happen? The end result is a software. So when you follow a particular process for developing the software, so the end product is the quality software. There may be multiple such processes exist. Not only one single project exists always. So there may be multiple project processes may exist. A project follows a particular process. So usually a single project follows a particular process. And the other type of process is process for managing the project. So for managing a particular project, so there may be a process, and that defines project planning and control. So usually, so the process for managing the project contains, so there it should define that how the project can be planned and controlled. and effort should be estimated. What effort, how much effort you really require for that particular project, that must be estimated. And you should have a proper activities should be scheduled properly. I mean, what sort of resources are really required, and that should take some sort of feedback in order to ensure the quality of the software. So that means you should always monitor the progress of the software development. So when you're going for this sort of process type, so usually these are all things will be defined. And there might be another process type which can be which is a process for change and configuration management. So it should resolve requests for changes whenever there is a changes need to be made in the existing software, and how these requests will be resolved. So this sort of this should be taken care by this particular process. Defining versions and their compositions, like you see, so usually whenever we develop any sort of software, we come by different versions. So maybe today we have one version of that particular software, maybe tomorrow we do have another version of that particular software. So now how we, I mean, how we manage these are all different versions, okay, and how we try to, you know, combine all of these versions, and you know, also when to release that particular version into the market. So these are all things will be handled by this sort of process. The other process type here is process for managing above processes themselves. Like as we have seen, the above two processes to manage, you know, those two processes types. So you need another process. Okay. So here, you know, it is concerned with, I mean, what sort of new tools or techniques that you can apply so that we can improve that particular process. So whatever the processes we have talked about, the previous processes, how we can improve them. So that is also need to be resolved by a particular process. So in order to improve the processes, so we need to go through some sort of standardizations and certifications like ISO, so international standard organizations, right? You have, so there is a capability maturity model, CMM, so they provide some sort of certification to the processes, right? It is also a process. So we need to get all those certifications. So it's to ensure that the process is a quality process. Now, as I said you, so a large software development company may have multiple development processes. So one process may be for client server based applications. The other process may be, there may be another process, development process for enterprise level ERP projects, or there may be a process for data warehousing type of project, or a software. Let's say you are going to develop a software which acts as a expert system, and you need to have some sort of process for that. So that is why if you have a company, and in your company you may follow multiple development processes, okay. And now it is also the happen that there are many projects going under each and every category, like under client and server based applications. You might have different types of projects again, okay. So for all of those projects, So we do not have a separate process model. What we need to do is we need to refine the project, the process model, the process. We need to refine little. We need to refine the process so that it can suit to that type of project. So let's say for a client server based application, let's say in your company there are 10 projects. Okay, but we have a standard process model for client server based applications. Okay, now for all those 10 projects, so the same process model may not be applied. Okay, only we need to you need to refine the process model in such a way that that process model should suit to that type of project. Okay, so that is what exactly we do. So now we need to see, as I said you, in a particular process, so there are certain steps or activities which need to be executed in a particular order, right? So then what is a step? So each step has a well-defined objective. So each and every step or the activities should have some objective. Okay, so and in order to execute that particular activity, we require some specific skilled people. I mean, we need some people with specific skills. Let's say, for example, one activity or the step the objective is to efficiently design the database for your project. Now you need to have a people who can carry such activity. That means you need to have a database designer. Okay, so if you have a database designer, then he can exactly carry such activity. That means for that particular step, you need some people with some specific skills. Takes specific inputs and produces well-defined output. That means each and every step will take some input and it will produce some output. Okay. Now, each and every step may begin with some entry criteria, and when it ends, so it should meet the exit criteria. Now, what is the entry criteria? Let's say you take an example like in our software development life cycle, there is a phase called software requirement specification phase. Okay, phase means that is one step. Okay, now what is the output that will come out from this requirement specification phase is the software requirement specification document. Now the document, SRS document, is produced from that particular phase. Now what is here the exit criteria? The exit criteria here is the SRS is complete. That means that SRS, whatever is will be produced from that particular phase, it should be complete, and it should be handed over to the customer for reviewing. After the SRS is reviewed properly by the customer and approved by the customer, then only you can leave that particular phase. That means that is the exit criteria. Exit criteria means the SRS should be complete, it should be reviewed and approved by the customer. Okay, if the customer is not, if the customer has not approved that particular document, that means it is not a complete SRS. Okay. In part of, we'll talk about SRS in detail. Okay, as of now you can understand that. And what would be a entry criteria? Entry criteria may be like this: unless or until the output that is coming from its previous step is complete, or unless it has an output from its previous step, so it cannot start this particular phase. Okay, so this way you can define the entry criteria and exit criteria. So each and every step uses some specific techniques, tools, guidelines, and if at all it has any conventions also. Step must be executed as per project plan that gives duration, effort, resources, and constraints. That means each and every step should follow the project plan. So in your project plan, what is there? So it must have defined, I mean, how long this step should continue, how many people need to be employed in order to carry out these activities. That is what we call as effort. And what are the really resources required for in order to execute that particular step. And if at all it has some constraints, whether these constraints are followed or not. So these things should be so that means the process steps should ensure that the activity are carried out as per its project plan. It must produce information for management so that the corrective actions can be taken. I mean, it should generate some sort of information for the management also. Who is a management? Management is the one who actually invested money or funded for development of that particular project. Or you can say the customer. Okay, so let's say one example here is, for example, the effort we estimated. Effort means how many people really need to be employed in order to carry out that particular task. Okay, so if that effort estimated is felt not appropriate at some point of time, then what you really require? You need more people to finish that particular task, because the people you estimated, like for example, you think of like this: in order to finish a particular task or assignment, I initially estimated that 4 people are really required to finish that particular task. Okay, and then I started that particular activity. I employed those 4 people, but after some time I observed with these 4 people the activity cannot be finished within time. So then what you need, what you really require? I think you really require more people, right? So, and this sort of information should be generated, okay, from a state. Then only the management will take some corrective action. Okay, so that means maybe the more resources will be added into that particular step, so as to finish that particular task. Otherwise the software will be failed. Okay, so adding more resources also, so whether you need more resources, so this sort of information should be generated from each and every step. And each and every step ends in a review. That means V and V, verification and validation. So what is a verification? Verification checks the consistency of the output with inputs, whether you are getting consistent output for the given input or not. So whatever the input is given to a step, so according to that input, whether you are getting consistent output or not. So that is a verification. And what is a validation? Validation is something whether the user needs are met or not. User needs means the user's requirement. So whatever the user's expectations are there from the system, so whether they are met or not. Okay, so that is what exactly checked. Okay, so that is what we call as validation. Verification is something we try to see that whether we have appropriate output to the consent input. And when we talk about the validation, whether user requirements are met or not, going to meet or not. Okay, so that will be verified. Yes, ask me.
Sir, I still can't understand the difference between validation and verification. Like, is the consistency of...
So listen, what I try to say, I say there is a step. Step means certain activity. Okay, so let's say for a certain activity, you give some input. Okay, when you give some input, whether you getting a consistent output or not. Okay, that is only checked in the verification. Okay, let's say, for example, one activity is like this. You going to develop a function that checks whether the number is a prime or not. Okay, whether the number is a prime or not. So when you give an input, okay, a number to the function, the output should say that either it's a prime or not prime. Okay, so for the input number, you should be able to see whether whether there is a appropriate output or not, whether there is a output coming or not. The output may be a prime or non-prime. Okay, but validation is something you going to check whether what I really require from the system. I mean, user what wants. So user wants is something that whenever I give any number, it should be able to correctly say me that it is a prime or not. Okay. So that is a requirement.
Sir, but don't they mean the same thing?
No, they are not the same thing. You see, I mean, we are talking about a phase step verification. Okay, user requirement is something that should be met. Okay, so let's say, for example, I say something like this. Okay, for example, during your maybe let's say, for example, your admission process. Takes an example of your admission process. Okay, so when you verification is something like this. Okay, so verification is something like this. Whenever you give your roll number there, okay, whenever you give your name there, okay, so the system should be able to generate a email ID for email ID as well as password. Okay, so for input is what? Your name. Output is what? So email and password. Okay, so this is what I mean, you need to check. So let's say, for example, when you give your name, it should not give phone number. Output should not give a phone number. Okay, do you understand what I am saying? So that is what checked during the verification. Whereas validation is what? So validation is something whenever my student gives some input, okay, to the system. Okay, I mean, so every student should get a email ID as well as password. Okay, so that is what my requirement. But checking appropriate checking for appropriate output to the input is a verification process. Okay, so that is what exactly. So now, if you do not understand, now we'll talk about this phase again. During the maintenance, we'll talk about in depth. Okay, about verification and validation. So now, as of now, you can think of there is a verification and validation. Now, whole thing, whatever I said, so they are described in this diagram. You can see now, let's say here is a step. The step is shown through rectangle box. Okay, so the left part is action to be carried out. Okay, actions to be carried out. I mean, each and every step will have some sort of activities or the actions. Okay, and each and every step ends with a review. Okay, now to that particular step we are giving some inputs. Okay, we are giving some inputs, right? And now unless or until the entry criteria of that particular step is met, so we are not allowed to enter into this particular step. Okay, and once the exit criteria are met, then only it gives some sort of output. Okay, as well as each and every step generates some information for the management, as I said you before, right? So maybe you require more resources so as to finish that particular task. Okay. Now, as well as to a particular step, so always you should be able to give some sort of project control information, because you need to control the project, right? So as I said you before also, like, let's say we monitor the progress. Let's say we are not progressing as desired at some point of time, so that means you need to take some corrective actions. How will you be going to take corrective actions? Maybe the management should give some sort of, let's say they say they say that you require more number of people in order to finish that particular task, right? So this sort of controlling information should be given to each and every step. Okay, then only you will be able to finish within time. Okay, so this is what all a process step. Now we will see some characteristics of a good process. So I said you, so we follow some process, but what are the characteristics of a good process? So it should be precisely defined. That means, when you, so whatever the project we are going to develop, okay, so the objective should be very precisely defined. I mean, it should not have ambiguity. What is to be done, when and how. I mean, that should be clearly defined. So this process should allow us to clearly, precisely define what is to be done by that particular software. Okay, and when need to be developed and how it will be developed. Okay, so these are all things should be precisely defined without any ambiguity. And it must be predictable. That means, as I said you before also, if we developed a successful project in the past with some certain outcome, success outcome, then we can repeat the same project. I mean, we can repeat the same process again for the similar kind of projects. I mean, we can take an example here, how they can be predictable with respect to effort and cost. Okay, so let's say there is a project one. So it's a web-based library application which will be developed by 3 persons in 4 months. Let's say there are 3 persons employed in 4 months. Okay, so within 4 months, these 3 people need to finish this web-based application. Okay, so this is what exactly effort. Okay, effort means 3 persons required to finish this application within 4 months. Required to develop this application within 4 months. This is the effort, okay, required. Now you can easily calculate the cost based upon this effort also. Like you can say, as I said you, 3 persons working, 3 persons will be continuously working for 4 months. Okay, let's say if you give a salary to a person, let's say 1 lakh rupees per month, so then what would be the cost really required? There are 3 people working for 4 months. Okay, and if we give 1 lakh rupees to a particular person per month, so what would be the cost required? Anyone?
12 lakhs.
12 lakhs, right? So that it is a 12 lakhs. Okay, because each person you are giving 1 lakh rupees, and that 1 lakh that will be given for 4 months. Okay, so that means the cost would be so it's a 12 lakhs rupee, right? So now you have a, so let's say, so you have estimated, I mean you have taken you have spent how much? 3 persons in 4 months, as well as the cost is 12 lakh. Okay, you have spent or you have spent on this web-based application, right? Now there is a similar kind of project which is a guest house booking. Okay, guest house booking. You wanted to book a guest house through online mode. Okay, so now this is also some sort of similar in complexity. Okay, so it should also take 12 person months. Okay, 12 person months means it is because it is a 3 persons in 4 months. So we can say it's a 12 person month also. Okay, so effort. Okay, so now this is the way that you can sometimes, if it really required to extrapolate also, you can extrapolate. Okay, extrapolate means something like a little bit you can add to that. Okay, so in order to fit with the guest house booking, so that is what we try to say. I mean, you just comparing, that means you are going to predict. Okay, so predictable with respect to effort and cost. Okay, so if you have a similar sort of application, so you can always predict. Now there is a predictable for quality also. Okay, so predictable for quality means the quality can be assessed by the number of defects, or the number and type of defects that comes that is seen in a particular software project. Okay, so now let's say the first project has 20 defects. Okay, 20 defects. So similarly, you can predict that in the second project also you will be going to see 20 number of defects. Okay, and similarly you can see the performance also, like performance is mostly, one example can be like this: response time. So how quickly the software is responding to your request, whatever the request that you are giving to a software. So how quickly you are getting a response, that can be the performance. Okay, so now these sort of things can be predicted. Okay, so predictable for quality. Okay, so if you have a less number of defects in the first project, similarly you can predict in the similar project that these many less number of defects that you're going to see. Okay, so the other characteristics here is it supports testing and maintainability. That means so always there should be a mechanism by which you should be able to test your software, okay, after development, as well as it should allow us to maintain that particular software. How easily you can maintain that particular software. Okay, maintenance, as I already explained to you before also, right? So this maintenance can be done by a third party, right? It can be done by a third party, like you have developed that particular software and you delivered at the client location. Now that software is working fine, but in order to maintain that particular software, as I said you before also, like the maintenance may be required, the change is required, not just because of the software itself, but maybe because of, you see, you have developed today by using Java programming language, right? Now what happens, so Java standard, they keep on changing. So today you have developed using Java 8. Okay, now tomorrow the technology is changing, so it might be Java 10. Okay, now thing is that, so you need to have new plugins. Okay, so as a result you need to change the software, or maybe the hardware that is running along for that particular software, along with that particular software. Okay, so that has been changed, or that is advanced hardware that is in place now. So now you need to maintain the software. That means you need to maintain the software, and that maintenance can be done by a third party, not the developer who is developed the software. They are not the only one who is going to maintain. That can be maintained by somebody else. So if somebody is going to maintain the software, that means you need to have, so you need to provide some necessary documentation also. If you have not provided necessary documentation, then it will be very difficult for the third party to understand. Okay, so that is the reason why you need to follow some sort of standards. Okay, standards and appropriate documentation, then only the third party person, they can understand and they can maintain the software whenever required. Okay, so now so this characteristics differentiates between a prototype and a product. So that means usually you can see like this product is something once it is produced. Okay, So that is a that is need to be that is a final product, right? Whereas when you see here, a prototype is not a final one. So it is a iterative process, right? Iteratively it develops something, and then we keep testing them. Okay, first let's say we develop something. Okay, we test that. If that functionality works well, then only you try to again modify, again take feedback. So these sort of things can be done with a prototype, whereas in case of product, so that's a final product. So once every requirements are made, so it is released. So usually when you are saying that it supports testing and maintainability, that means it should work like a prototype. Okay, so that is what really required uh, to be supported by a good process. Okay, so you should be always able to maintain that particular software. Okay, and test that particular software in different iterations. Facilitates early detection of and removal of defects. So your process should always help you in detecting and removing the defects. If at all the software has some defects, so it should allow you to remove them. It should allow you to detect first and then remove those defects. Okay, so late detection correction is costly. Let's say for example, so lately if you try to detect a bug, what will happen? Defect. So now because you have to modify all of them again. Okay, but if you detect that particular defect is when it is originated or generated. If you correct that particular defect that time, so then it will be very useful because you can save some sort of cost. Okay, so like as I say, so we'll be going through different steps, right? Let's say we have followed 10 steps. Okay, so now the defect, there is a defect in the second step, but we have not identified or detected that particular defect in the second step, but we detected that particular defect when at 10th step. Okay, now what will happen? So when you detected, now you need to correct that particular defect. In order to correct that particular defect, you have to make changes to all those. Again, you will have to go back and make changes in all of the 10 steps, and that is very costlier affair. Okay, costly affair. That is a costly affair, right? So that is why. So as when that particular defect is introduced, so if you can try to detect and correct there itself, then it will reduce the cost of the project. Okay, so a good process model should facilitate that. It should facilitate monitoring and improvement. A good process should always allow you to take feedback from the customer. Okay, and accordingly it should modify, and sometimes it should allow new tools and technologies, whatever there in the market. It should adapt you to those technologies. Okay, tools, and it should also allow you to measure the progress. Okay, so if you can measure the progress of the development software, okay, so then we should be able to deliver that product within time, because we have a quality software developed within time. So that would be the reason. Now, so I said you there are many software process, or sometimes we call as software life cycle model also. Okay, so we'll talk about few process models. Okay, or software life cycle models. What are those? So each and every software life cycle model, they have some series of identifiable stages that a software product undergoes during its lifetime. One is that feasibility study. This is one step, feasibility study, and thereafter requirement analysis and specification. As I said you before also, so there is a phase that is the requirement analysis and specification, and thereafter design, coding, testing, and maintenance. So these are the various steps. Okay, so these are the identified stages that need to be followed while developing the software. So why you need a life cycle model? So it's a descriptive and diagrammatic model of software life cycle, identifies all the activities required for product development, establishes a precedence ordering among different activities. As I said you, unless or until this requirement analysis phase is completed, you are not allowed to go into design phase. Something that means there is some sort of precedence ordering. Okay, so there is a ordering, precedence ordering, right? And divides life cycle into phases. That is what. So whole life cycle is divided into these all different phases. Okay, so feasibility, requirement analysis, design, coding, testing, and maintenance. Okay. Now, several different activities may be carried out in each life cycle phase or step. As I described before also, explained before also. So each and every step will have some activities again. Okay, let's say for example design stage. So in your design phase, we will carry out something called structured analysis as well as structured design. Okay, so these are the two activities. We will talk about them in detail again when we are talking about each and every phase. Okay. Now, so why we need this life cycle model? The reason here is, so a written description. So mostly whenever you are going through any sort of life cycle model, so we are following these all different steps. Okay, and these steps are in the form of some sort of so they are written in natural language like English. Okay, so why you do all those things and why we follow all these steps? Okay, so now forms a common understanding of activity among the software developers, right? So when you describe all these steps, okay, so that means it will create some sort of common understanding among all the common understanding of activities among all the software developers. Like you see, so when you talk about the design, right? So there is a so when you are going to develop any sort of software, so various people are involved. One is analyst. Okay, we'll talk about that. Who in which phase that analyst will come. Will appear. These all things we'll discuss later on, but you can think of there is a development team, there is a coder, there is a tester, there is a analyst. Okay, now these people need to have a common understanding about each and every activity. That is the reason why we have this sort of life cycle model. Helps in identifying inconsistencies, redundancies, omissions in the development process. Okay, so when you go through this sort of life cycle model, so we should be able to identify if at all inconsistencies is there or redundancies are there. I mean, or the same thing we are, I mean, there should not have multiple interpretations. Okay, so there should be a single interpretations. Okay, so if you have a sometimes same thing can be described in many ways, so that means the redundancies are there. So and sometimes we omit, right, by mistake, or we omit certain things. So those things can be easily identified if you're going through any process model. Helps in tailoring a process model for specific projects, right? And if you have some sort of life cycle model, then you will be able to make changes to a process model so that it can suit to a particular project. These processes are tailored for special projects. Okay, so whenever you really require, you can tailor them to suit a particular project. Okay, so a documented process model, so you need to have a well documented process model, because if you have a well documented process model, then only you will be able to tailor the process model so as to fit a particular project. Okay, so that means if you have not properly documented, then you cannot tailor them. So that is what the problem will come. And the development team must identify a suitable life cycle model. Okay, so whenever you going to develop any project, okay, so development teams must identify a suitable life cycle model. So there are various life cycle model. We will talk to them, but as of now you can understand that. So one life cycle model should be applied to a particular project. Okay. So, and then, so we should all adhere to it. So once if you identified a life cycle model, then we need to follow that particular life cycle model while developing a software. Primary advantages of adhering to a life cycle model. So development of software takes place in systematic and disciplined manner, because if we follow a life cycle model, then our development will take place in a systematic and disciplined manner. So when a program is developed by a single programmer, let's say you can compare your software product with a simple program. So in case of a single program, so you will have a single programmer. Okay, and he has the freedom to decide his exact steps. I mean, whether whatever the steps you wanted to follow, he can follow. Okay, so that is the exploratory way he can decide the steps, because he is the only sole person who is developing that particular program. Okay, he has a freedom to decide whatever the steps he wanted, whether he wanted to omit requirement analysis phase, he can omit. Okay, or he may first apply, he may first going through a coding, that is fine. Usually we see whenever we ask a program, when we give a assignment to our students, so what they usually do, without going through other phases, they directly enter into coding phase. So they try to code first. Okay, so that is what they do. So because they have a freedom to decide. But when a software product is being developed by developed, so usually a team of people work for this particular product, right? So there should be a precise understanding among team members as to when to do what. Okay, so there should be a common understanding. Okay, there should be a precise understanding among different team members, because the software product will be developed by a team of people, right? So if they do not have a common understanding when to start that particular thing or what to do, and this sort of common understanding is not there among these team members, then you will not be able to deliver a good quality project. That means it would lead to chaos and project failure. So a software project will never succeed if engineer starts writing code. Okay, so that means that is what we are trying to say. So without going through the problem definition, requirement analysis, and specification, if you directly go and code the program, so definitely that project will be failed. Another concentrates on writing the test document fast. Okay, so before the code is developed, or before the problem is defined, if the tester thinks that he need to start his work first, I mean he tried to develop his test cases. Okay, and yet another engineer first defines the file structure. I mean, if there is a need of file structure, so the engineer who is a skilled person in this particular activity, so he tried to do his work first, and another defines input output for his portion first. So everybody tried to do themselves. I mean, everyone trying to do their work first. Then what will happen? You are not going to come up with a successful software. So you need to follow some precedence order. That means first problem should be defined, and then the requirement should be gathered, and then analyzed, and then design should be take place thereafter, and then someone has to develop the code or write the code, and then testing should be carried out. If we follow this sort of precedence order, then only we'll be able to solve the will be able to come up with a good quality software. When a life cycle model is added to, the project manager can at any time fairly accurately tell at which stage design, code, test of the project is. So you will be able to monitor easily. Okay, so if you following any sort of life cycle model, at any point of time, if the project manager want to know where we are, how much progress we have made, so what is what sort of milestones we have achieved, maybe design is finished or coding is finished or test is finished, these sort of things can be monitored easily if you follow any sort of life cycle model. It becomes very difficult to track the progress of the project otherwise. If you do not follow a life cycle model, then you will not be able to track the progress. Okay, the project manager would have to depend on the guess of the team members. I mean, whatever the team member says, let's say we have developed the software, that means you have to agree with them. Okay, so now the problem leads to a 99% complete syndrome. So 99% complete syndrome is something like this. Okay, so let's say if I have assigned you an assignment, okay, and if I when I ask you whether have you finished the assignment, then unknowingly what you say, sir, I have almost finished, only little part is left. But how much little part is left, that is not known. Okay, but when you finish that little part, then you will say, sir, still it is not happening. I think I need to go again, right? So this sort of things is called as 99% of complete syndrome. Okay, so because you concentrate at that particular point of time to find out that defect. Okay, when you corrected that defect, you may end up with another defect. Okay, when you corrected that defect, you may end up with another defect, and it is never going to, you never going to give a sense of that you have completed that assignment. Okay, so this sort of thing, so this sort of problem will arise. Okay, that is what we call as 99% complete syndrome. So what is the summary? A fundamental necessity while developing any large software product, adoption of life cycle model. So we need to go through some sort of life cycle model. Okay, when you adhere to any life cycle model, so you will be able to carry out the activities in a systematic and disciplined manner. Also makes it easier to manage a software development effort. So you should be able to manage the effort. And these are actually the books you may go through. Okay, one is Pressman, Software Engineering Practitioner's Approach. Okay, Rajiv Mal, Fundamental of Software Engineering. And there is a Ian Somerville, Software Engineering, and Pankaj Jalate, an integrated approach to software engineering. So Pankaj Jalate is a retired professor from IIT Delhi, and Rajiv Mal, he's a currently full professor at IIT Kharagpur. Okay, so you can follow their books also. So I have taken the almost content from all of these books. Okay, so some portion you might find in Pressman, some portion you will find in Fundamentals of Software Engineering, something you will find in Somerville, something from Pankaj Jalate. Okay, so we stop here today's lecture, and I am going to take the attendance now. Okay, thank you. Any doubt?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.